Well, good morning. How are you? Good. My name is Brian Clark, and I want to welcome all of you guys and everybody online. If you are online joining us, we're so grateful that you're joining us that way. I need to start off with doing a public apology. I went to Brahms. Amos and Andrew took me to Brahms for lunch, and I had a burger there. Now, some of you guys might remember a few weeks ago, I had said, quote, Brahms burgers are trash, okay? Throw them in the trash and go get a real burger at Whataburger, okay? Now, I'm still not going to say that I'm going to rank Brahms over Whataburger. I mean, Whataburger is the king, okay? Let's be right. But I went there, and that is a darn good burger, okay? It's a double, and here's the thing that, see on the screen right there on the bottom there? I didn't know you can upgrade to a shake for free, okay? There you go, okay? So I apologize, okay? All right. Knowing the value of things is important, am I right? My grandpa, he was a funny guy, Grandpa Irvin. And he was watching The Price is Right one day. And do you guys remember the giant satellite dishes that we used to have, the ones that would move, and everything, Galaxy 5 and all, and everything? Well, he was watching it, I guess, maybe on air, not on the satellite, on air. And he watched it. Well, then a bunch of us came over to his house right as the program ended, and we were flipping through his TV, and we landed on The Price is Right. It was airing on the satellite an hour later. And he had just watched it, but we didn't know that he did. And so we watched it, and he just, he was grinning a little bit, and he said, you know what? That girl that they just called up there, she looks really smart. I bet you she wins this showcase right here. And we're like, yeah, okay, whatever. And he goes, you know what? You want to make a bet? And I didn't, but he had another grandson named Cody, and Cody was like, yeah, I'll make a bet. There's 5 of them there. How could you know that I've got 1 in 5 odds, or you've only got 1 in 5 odds to win this thing? And so he said, okay, how about $5? And so he's like, you're on. Well, of course, she won. And then he's like, man, how did you know? You got lucky on that. And Grandpa said, okay, well, now she's up on stage, and you know what? And he said, I bet this happens, whatever happened, because he knew. And he goes, I'll do double or nothing. And Cody was like, okay, yeah, double or nothing. And then it happened. And he kept doing that all the way through the show, and he was down $200 to Grandpa. And Grandpa, he never told him. He never told him. Made him pay $200. Oh man, he was laughing about that. Years later, he told me about it. Oh, I was dying. Knowing the value of something is important. Have you ever bought something that was just overvalued and you didn't find out till later? Right? Oh, I hate those. Right? I hate those. In fact, I had one of those moments where I bought a truck, and this is all the way back in California. This is a long time ago, but I bought a truck, and I went in, and it takes forever. It does. It takes forever. And so I was in there, and then they get you in there, and what do they want you to buy? They want you to buy the extended warranty, right? Don't ever do that. That's a ripoff, okay? Well, fortunately, I knew that. And so I said, no, I don't want that. Don't give me that, whatever. Well, he was just kept on. And I said, no, I don't want it. Don't put it in there. Well, he put it in there in the contract, and I did not read the contract carefully enough. And so I bought the truck, and went home, and I was telling Logan about it, my wife, and I showed her the contract, and I was like looking on, and boom, there it was, the extended, where they put it in there. I was just, how would you feel, right? I was just so mad, right, that I had bought this truck, and they overvalued what it was worth. And so I went back, and I was pretty upset, right? And I asked for the salesman, and this is a couple days later, and I finally, he come out, and I said, hey, look, I bought this truck, and you put this in here, kind of thing. And he said, oh, yeah, I thought we talked about that. You wanted that, right? I said, no, I told you several times. And and he's like, I'm sorry, it's done. And he was just saying like, sorry about you. And I was like, oh, I didn't know what to do, right? And so I'm like, I don't know, like 25 years old, 26 years old. I was pretty young. And all I thought to say to him in the moment was, I got real close to his face. I wasn't gonna like punch him or anything, but I just got real close and I said, I just want you to look me in the eyes, man to man, and tell me that this is how you do business here. And other people were like in the lobby and it got like super tense, and I was like shaking on the inside. You ever have one of those conversations where you're all like messed up? But knowing the value of something is of utmost importance. We all value things in our life. Like, for example, that truck had a certain value to me, not only monetarily, but also to me, like the use of it, right? And the things. I mean, how many of us name our trucks, right? The Pewter Scooter, I called that one. It was Pewter. Yeah, it was great. It was great. Sports. I value sports a lot, right? We value sports. Possessions, career, accolades, relationships, zip codes. And we all know things in our life that are worth things, and then we all put a value to that, and then we all devalue other things. And we all know people who have overvalued some things and some people who have undervalued other things. But what happens when you value the wrong things in life? When what you build your life on and what you value your life on, right? What happens when those turned out to be the wrong things? Embarrassment, regret, remorse, resentment. Now, if I took you out to lunch and got a great burger at Brahms, and I sat down with you and I said, now look, do you want at the end of your life to have embarrassment, regret, resentment, those kinds of things? Every single one of us would say what? No, of course not. No way. It's important to evaluate what we value. But how often do we take pause to do that, to reevaluate? It's probably pretty rare. Because what happens in life is we just put our heads down and we go, right? We're just doing what's on our calendar. We go. And rarely do we take the time to reevaluate what we value. Now, sometimes that reevaluation is forced on us. Am I right? Big changes in our lives, right? You move out of state. You get married, right? You have kids. You have a job opportunity. You have a divorce. You get grandkids. You have retirement. Maybe your health changes, right? And then all of a sudden, it's forced upon us to reevaluate what is worth our time, worth our care, worth our effort, and what's not, right? And then other things might be tragedy. That tragedy is one of those things that forces reevaluation. When someone that you care about passes away, when you have financial ruin, that is tragedy in our lives that makes us to reevaluate what's important in our lives. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you think, for you personally, right now, that you are valuing everything correctly in your life? That everything that you put a high value on right now is correct, and everything that you put a low value on is correct? Now, I would like to think that, yeah, I have it right, but if I'm honest, I probably don't, and here's why I know that. If you could go back to your 13-year-old or your 18-year-old self, right, and give them any advice, would you be able to tell them anything? Would you have anything to say to that person? And of course, all of us would say, yeah, I would tell them this. We inherently overvalue the wrong things and undervalue the wrong things whenever we're teenagers. We valued other people's opinion of ourselves way too much, didn't we? And what did it lead to? It led to us doing things that we knew we shouldn't have done. We valued the way people looked on the outside way more than how they looked on the inside. And what did that lead us to? It led us to dating people that was all wrong for us. We valued the short-term fun more than the long-term goals that we had, and led to us partying and getting in trouble and forfeiting the things that we really wanted down the road. And so we know that if we look back in our lives, that we could say, oh yeah, we didn't really have our values exactly right. Now, just ask yourself, in 20 years, you, yourself, in 20 years, if they were able to walk through the door right now and sit down with you, do you think that version of yourself would have any advice for you now? Do you think you're going to know more or less when you're older? Well, the answer is probably all of us would say more, more. I would be wiser whenever I'm older, and that's what God does for us. He gives us wisdom as we get older. And so the chances of us right now having at least some values not right, I would say is probably pretty high. That we don't have everything figured out the way that we will later in life. Paul had a true gift. Talk about a guy who was valuing the wrong things. He was headed down the wrong road, and Jesus literally showed up in his life, and it changed. At that very moment, it changed everything that he valued. Now, Paul was utterly convinced, 1,000%, that he had it correct. But it changed. It all changed in an instant for Paul. Now, Paul was what we'll hear him in a second call himself a Hebrew of Hebrews. But it was all wrong. Everything that he was about was wrong. Now, that's shocking. If you said to me that everything that you're passionate about, everything that you're working for, everything in my life is wrong, that's going to be a shocking thing. And it's probably going to get met with some resistance, right? But for Paul, that was true. And Jesus gave him a gift of not only being able to see it, but being able to change it. Paul thought that Jesus was a fraud, that Christianity was a false religion, and he was pulling people away. And he thought that Christianity was pulling people away from the true religion. So what does he do? He doesn't just talk about it, he does something about it. And he starts destroying this false religion and their followers, killing them and wrecking their families by imprisoning them. And then he meets Jesus. He thought Jesus was in the grave. He thought they stole the body and hid it somewhere. But it turns out he wasn't in the grave, and he was alive. And when he showed up, and Paul talks about this 3 times in Acts, and I want to look at it in Acts chapter 9, verse 1 through 5. Look at what it says. It says, meanwhile, Saul, his name used to be Saul, was still breathing out murderous threats against the Lord's disciples. He went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogues in Damascus so that if he found any there who belonged to the way, that's what they call Christianity, whether men or women, he might take them as prisoners to Jerusalem. And as he neared Damascus on his journey, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice say to him, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? And look what he asked. He says, who are you, Lord? Saul asks. Who are you, Lord? This is the question. The answer to that question changes everything, not only for Paul, right? But for us. Who are you, Lord? And in Acts chapter 9, verse 5, it says, I am Jesus. Can you imagine the jaw? You could hear the jaw drop and hit the ground. I'm Jesus, whom you are persecuted, he replied. Now, all these years later, he sits in prison and he's writing this letter that we're going through in Philippians. In prison for the sake of Jesus, he had changed everything. What he used to value, he now devalued. And what he used to devalue, he now valued. He had suffered much for Jesus, but previously he was causing the suffering to Christ's followers. And we're in a series called Firm Foundation. And this week it especially hits on that idea. The idea that the foundation that we build our lives on, it comes from what we value. Everything sits on that foundation. What you value and choose to devalue is the foundation of which you build your life. So if you get that one wrong, the whole rest of the thing is messed up. You cannot get this one wrong. This one is the one that has to be correct. And if it is correct, man, you can build something solid on there. And so let's look at it. Philippians chapter 3. Paul writes, in Philippians chapter 3, verse 1 through 3, we read this last week. It says, "Further, my brothers and sisters, rejoice in the Lord. It is no trouble for me to write these same things to you again, and it is a safeguard for you. Watch out for those dogs, those evildoers, those mutilators of the flesh. For it is we who are the circumcision, who serve God by his Spirit, who boast in Christ Jesus, and who put no confidence in the flesh." See, there was a group of people, we talked about it last week, that they were valuing the wrong things, just like Paul did when he was younger. And they were called Judaizers. And they taught that you had to follow the law and before you became a Christian. You had to get the law right, and then you could become a Christian. And Paul would tell these guys that the whole point of the law was to show the problem, not fix the problem. The whole point of the Old Testament was to show the need for Jesus. That's all it was to do. It was never to fix the problem. Hebrews 10:4 says, "It is impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sin." The law was never meant to do that. Has anybody ever tried to, had the job of holding a flashlight for your dad? Terrible job, isn't it? Horrible job. You hear all kinds of great things whenever you're doing that. You know, and my problem was always just like, my dad was a farmer, and on the farm, we always fixed our own cars, you know what I'm saying? And so I was just a little boy, and so what was I going to do? Well, I was going to do this. And so you'd put it on where you thought was supposed to be, right? And then what do you do? It's so boring. It's so boring, and you just get to doing this, and then eventually says, "Brian, hurry, get it back on what I'm doing here." You're like, "Oh, yeah, sorry, Dad." And then, inevitably, it was just this game. And of course, and he would be, doing this, and what would happen? He'd slip and knock his knuckles, and then other things. I'd learn all kinds of language skills, and no, I shouldn't say that. Dad, if you're watching, he was not a cursor. He would get mad, but he wouldn't curse, so I couldn't say that. But this is what the law was. It was a flashlight to fix to show the problem, not to fix it. I was not the one who fixed those trucks. I would illuminate the problem, show where the problem was, and who would fix it? Dad. He was the one who fixed it. The law was never meant to fix the problem. It was to show us that we had a problem, that we need Jesus. And it would illuminate this because nobody could follow the law. Nobody could. And Paul says, before the law, you didn't know that you were sinners. If there is no law, if there's no speed limit on this road, then you can't break the law, right? But as soon as they post the speed limit, then all of a sudden you know you're going too fast. The law was to show us that we need Jesus. It was never meant to fix it. And so Jesus, of course, what's he say? He said, I have not, when he gets here, he said, I have not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. And how is that? Because he fixed it. He was the solution. The law did its job in showing that we had a problem. And now Jesus fulfilled it. Now we can do away with the law, Paul says. And these Judaizers were sitting there, no, you have to follow the law. You have to be circumcised. You have to do these things. And then you can become a Christian. And Paul says to these guys, all right, let's play that game. And you're going to lose. Because look what he says in Philippians 3, 4 through 6. He says, though I myself have reasons for such confidence, if someone else thinks that they have reasons to put confidence in the flesh, I have more. I have more than you. He says, circumcised on the 8th day. These Judaizers, they were Gentiles. They were being circumcised as adults. Ouch. But that's what was happening. And he says, all right, yeah, you're circumcised, but I was circumcised on the 8th day, like a real Jew. My circumcision is superior to yours. Take an L and sit down. And then he says, of the people of Israel, he said, I'm actually a Jew, not you. Salvation came from the Jews because Jesus was a Jew. So sit down. And then he says, of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of Hebrews. Right? Both of those are to do with his birth into this status. And then he says, in regards to the law, now he starts talking about not just how he was born awesome, but then what he became was awesome, what he did. Watch what he does. In regard to the law, he said, I was a Pharisee. Now, we see that as a negative because we always read about the negative things that the Pharisees were, and they were. But in those days, Pharisees were elite. They were highly regarded, respected men, educated amongst people who were not educated. Okay, philosophers, right? And he was a Pharisee. These guys weren't Pharisees, okay? And then he says, as for zeal, persecuting the church. A lot of people talked bad about the church. I actually did something about it. Like I killed people. Sit down. And then he says, as for righteousness based on the law, he said, faultless. Try to find somebody who could accuse me. He said, they had nothing on Paul. If you want to play that game, let's play it. And Paul said, I'll gladly play that with you. And you will lose. Paul was beating them at their own game. But it was all for nothing. It was all for nothing. He takes the ledger sheet out, right? And has two columns. The gains column and the loss column. And all those things, he starts listing them out on the gains because he thought that they were gains. And then he circles them and moves them all in one singular motion to the loss column. They all were lost. Look, Philippians 3, 7 and 8. But whatever were gains to me, I now consider loss for the sake of Christ. It reminds me of a story. I had a good friend. He was a student pastor. His name was Kyle Rodell, and his dad was just nuts. He was nuts. He told me a story. We went to Mexico to go build houses one day, and his dad went with us, and he was telling this story of when he got married. They got a house, and they were right before their wedding. They were in that house getting it all ready. They weren't living together, but they were just getting it ready, right? And this guy drives up in the neighborhood in this Cadillac, and Kyle Rodell's dad, I can't remember his name, but he was out there, and he was out on the yard, and the guy stops and he pulls over, and he says, "Hey man, I got a pretty big TV that I want to sell real cheap." He's like, "Oh, I got no money," and he goes, "Well, just take a look at it." And he opens up his trunk, and it's this massive TV. Back in those days, it wasn't like, I don't even know how he got in his trunk, honestly. Like, those things were big, And so it's this big TV, and he told him, I'll give it to you for, I don't know what he told him, $500 or $1,000, which was like way cheap compared to what that TV should cost. And instead of red flags going up, why do you have this TV in your trunk, selling it just to some random guy? He thought, man, that is a good deal. But they had no money at all. So he said, I got to have this TV. This will be in the house for years. I got to have it. And this is like, he's going to drive off if I don't. And so he runs inside, and literally in the literal cookie jar, they had a wad of cash that was for their honeymoon. And he grabs the wad of cash, and he goes out, and his fiance is like, whoa, what are you doing? And he's like, there's this guy, I can't explain it right now, but TV, driving off, like, it's awesome, just hold on. And she's like, no, what are you doing? That's for our honeymoon. And he goes, we'll figure it out. And he takes it, and he goes outside. He gives the cash to the guy. The guy gives him the TV in the box and everything like that. And of course, he, like a responsible guy, he opens the box and makes sure it's in there, and everything. So it's there. So all right, transaction's made. The wife is just fuming, right? And he brings it inside, and he's just like, just calm down. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. They pull it out, and it's very light. They get it out of the box. They plug it in. Nothing happens. It's like, what's going on? He looks on the backside of the TV. It's all ripped out. All the guts are gone. The TV was totally worthless. Totally worthless. He said they couldn't afford to go on a honeymoon anymore, and so they went camping. And all they had was, they didn't have a tent. They didn't have anything. They just had some blankets, and they slept outside, and they had a chair. The funny part about it was later on, he was fishing. She was on the river, on the bank of the river, and he was fishing, and all of a sudden, they were by the dam, and all of a sudden they heard this, and he's like, what in the world? Is it noon? They're doing like the weather thing, whatever. Well, they released the dam, and they got swept away. Their chair is now gone. Everything. That's how he started off his marriage. Paul says, whatever were gains, right? It reminds me of that story because he had it. He thought he had something. And then he opens up the TV, and it was all for loss. It looked good until you look at it. And then all of a sudden, it's worthless. It's absolutely worthless. And Paul said, I thought I had it. I thought I had something. And then it turns out it was empty and devoid. It was worthless. Look in verse 8. It says, what is more? I consider everything a loss. Everything, not even just that. He says everything a loss for the sake of Christ. Oh, because of the surpassing worth of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord, for whose sake I have lost all things. I consider them, and then what he says, garbage, that I may gain Christ. When Jesus appeared to Paul, his whole value system crumbled. And Paul realized he could not earn his salvation. Everything that he had once valued, it turned out to be fake and worthless. All of his hard work, his meticulous law keeping, his zeal for the law, it gained him nothing. And therefore, because none of it could do anything for him, it was garbage. It was absolute garbage. Now, I want to be clear here. This word that he says for garbage is not garbage. The NIV PG version rated this word that he says. It is not garbage that he said. It is human feces, and the vulgar term for it. That's what he said. Now, the NIV was a little uncomfortable with that, so they put in the word garbage. But either way, it makes the sense. It makes the point that it was all crud. It was all worthless. It was all to be taken out and thrown away and done away with. It was garbage. When you hold up anything next to Jesus, anything, it's garbage compared to Jesus. It's human waste compared to Jesus. It can look great on its own, but the moment you take it and you hold it up next to Jesus, it looks like garbage. Instead, now his goal was simple. Look at it. Philippians 3:10 and 11. I want to, what? What does he want now? I want to know Christ. Yes, to know the power of his resurrection and participation in his sufferings, becoming like him. And he doesn't just say becoming like him. How do you have to become like Jesus? In his death. And so somehow attaining to the resurrection from the dead. You cannot resurrect unless you are like him in his death. His main goal now, what is gain for him now, is to know Jesus. Life is knowing Jesus, to be with him, to be one with him, to live with him. Jesus is the point. It's all about Jesus. It always had been, even if Paul didn't know it, and it always will be about Jesus. If Jesus really is who he said that he was, it changes everything that we value. Jesus was either a lunatic, right, who believed himself to be God, but was just insane, right? Either he was a lunatic and he fooled himself and he fooled us too. Can you imagine how embarrassing that is for us if we're giving our whole entire lives to a lunatic? That's a possibility, that he could be a lunatic and this whole thing is a waste. It's possible. Or he was a liar who knew that he wasn't God but just wanted to be worshiped. There's a lot of those out there. And then all those witnesses of the resurrection, all those people who witnessed him, who saw him after he raised from the dead, they're all liars. And all the apostles that died torturous deaths, they were somehow superhuman because they all endured that torture for a lie and they never gave it up. Or Jesus really is God. And it was proven when he raised from the dead. And we can trust all those witnesses that saw him. And we know that there was never a body recovered. It was the largest manhunt in history. Both the Jews and the Romans desperately wanted that body. And nothing ever turned up. In fact, many of those Jewish rulers that wanted that body, what happened to them later? They became Christians. A lot of them became Christians. James, Jesus' own brother, did not believe in him. Thought Jesus was a lunatic. He came to get him one time because they thought that he was out of his mind, the Bible says. And then all of a sudden, after Jesus' resurrection, James switches his whole value system and becomes a leader in the church for his big brother. Paul, who was vehemently opposed to Christ, became a Christ follower. See, if Jesus was who he said that he was, it changes Paul's values. But that's Paul. What about us? Man, I can think about the best things in my life, and they are all trash compared to Jesus. My first year in baseball, I was not good, to put it plainly. Every time I got up to the plate, every single pitch, I swung. Never once did I hit the ball. I swung and struck out every single time until one day, my parents couldn't be at a ball game. Then I felt like the pressure was gone, and I foul tipped it off. I was so proud. Of course, I struck out later. But my second year in baseball, do you know what happened? I came alive. I don't know what happened, but I was hitting home runs. I was not striking out. I was doing awesome. And you know what I got? I got a trophy. And you know what this trophy says? It says Texhoma Rotary, second year player of the year. Oh my gosh. There's no applause. Come on. I feel like it. Thank you. Oh man. No, you don't have to do that. Oh gosh. Now look, this really meant something to me, didn't it? You know, it really did. It's kind of comical now, but at the time it meant a lot, you know. Man, just take this for example, and think about your own accomplishments in your life. Think about ones that actually do matter. things that you've done that are actually worth something, right? And just put them into this trophy. Think about it. What do you think is your greatest accomplishment here on this earth? Think about it. Put it in your mind. And put it on this trophy. When I hold this next to Jesus, what is this? It is absolute garbage. It is worth nothing. Nothing at all. There's nothing that this world can ever offer me, can do for me, that I can do for this world, that I could ever hold up next to Jesus and not make it look like garbage, like human waste. There's nothing. Do you know where I had to get this from? It was in a box in the attic. Do you know what's going to happen when I die? My kids are going to take this out and they're going to say, cool. And what are they going to do with it? They're going to take a trash bag, a lot like this. They're going to put it in that trash bag and they are going to throw it away where it belongs. You know what I'm saying? I keep it just because, I don't know, I relive the glory days every once in a while, I guess. They don't care, nor should they. The best things in my life, I love sports. Sports was a big deal in my life. They helped me become a better person, and it was fun. But if I hold this trophy up next to Jesus, it's garbage. I think about other things in my life that I value. I value time with my family. And one time we went on this vacation to Disney World. It was awesome because on the way down, my youngest son, we had stopped at a Chick-fil-A. And Logan and I were ordering at the counter, and all of a sudden we hear this screaming, this bloody murder going on at the slide in the Chick-fil-A. And it's my son, Major, okay? And he's like, I don't know, he's like 1 year old or something like that. I don't know. He's real little. And he's just going crazy, crazy, crazy. And you can see Charlie, my oldest, she's kind of not telling everything, you know? And you can almost tell something's up. Something's up. And so I grab him, I pick him up, and he's like screaming. He can't talk right. You know what I'm saying? Like he's too little. And so I'm like, what is going on? And his leg is hurt. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Gosh, but calm down. Don't be screaming like you were in front of everybody like this. We're trying to get you chicken. And so I put him down, and I put him down, and he could barely walk. He had just learned to walk. And immediately he goes like this, and he goes to the ground. And I was like, oh, little 1 year olds don't fake stuff. And so I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? So I picked him up, and he's obviously injured. Well, we get down there to Orlando, and Logan takes him right to the ER. And me and the kids went to go swim. But anyway, they get there, and he had broke his leg. Charlie had him between her legs going down the slide, and he caught his leg on the slide and snapped it. It was awesome. just hold on. It was awesome because he now has a broken leg. And we had a little stroller thing, a wagon that we had rented, And so I went to the front office at Disney and I said, hey, this kid's got a broken leg. I can't, I'm not allowed to take this. I can't carry him, everywhere. And I can't take this through the line. It's so big. What are we going to do? And they said, oh man, they said, you know what? We'll give you a disability pass. Now, let me explain to you what happened that vacation. Back then, they used to do fast passes for 3 rides, so you could go to the front of the line 3 times, okay? And Major was so little that he couldn't ride all the rides. And so then they had what's called a parent swap, okay? So then Logan would take the older 2, I would sit with Major, and then on the fast pass, and then it would be my turn. Then we could jump to the line again and do parent swap, and then I could ride the rides with them. And then, but in the meantime, this disability pass, what it was you could go to another ride that you didn't have a fast pass for and go and put in your reservation or whatever. And so it'd be like, if it's 60-minute wait, you would scan your wrist band, and then you could come back 10 minutes till 50 minutes, and then get right to the front of the line. So we'd go do that, go do fast pass, get on the line, get on the ride, do parent swap. Then by that time, 50 minutes has been up. So then we'd go get on that ride, boom, go fast pass, parent swap, go do this. We never waited, not one line. The whole Disney trip, it was amazing. It was the best vacation everywhere. And so when we went the second time, we had to draw straws for who was going to get their leg broke. There was a picture. Did you put it up already? Yeah, that was from that vacation. Look at his little cast there. Yeah. I have great memories from that vacation. But if I hold that vacation up next to Jesus, as dear as that is to me, if I hold that experience up to the experience of Jesus, it's garbage. That was awesome, and I will carry that memory forever. But that, as great as it was, is absolute garbage compared to Jesus. I would never take that over Jesus. Never in a million years would I take that over Jesus. That would be an instant no way. I would never value that over Jesus. I think about my wedding day. We invited the whole church. It was awesome. It was great. It was just a magical day for me. We had a youth group band. I was a youth pastor, and we had a youth group band, and they led us all in worship that day. For us, this was a union from and for Jesus, and so we worshiped together. The reception was awesome. It was an amazing day. And I want to say something. Logan, that day, all you guys that have been married, what an awesome day that was for you. And how special that is. And Logan, of all the things in my life, she is absolutely the best thing in my life. We've moved from California to Tulsa to Indiana and now to here, and there's many times where we didn't have anybody but each other. And we have grown really close. We are legitimately best friends. We love each other. We like being around each other. It's great. It's going to be us till the end. And one of us will be at the other one's funeral. And I've kind of got a competition with her, and I think it's going to be her funeral that I'm at. But as special as my marriage is, the day that she dies, and when she is finally with Jesus, and she can hold up our marriage right next to him, there's no comparison to be with Brian or to be with Jesus, right? There's no comparison. And she is my everything. She is my everything. She is the best thing about this life for me. But if I was to compare her to Jesus, there's no comparison. The best things of this world that can offer are trash compared to Jesus. My career, my car, my diploma, abilities, my accomplishments, community, my country, my reputation, my vacations, my experiences, my house, all of those are good things, but they cannot save me. Only Jesus can do that. So for us, it comes down to two things. Number one, devalue temporary things. Devalue temporary things. My possessions are great, but they cannot save me. Be open-handed with those things. You heard me last week talk about our Next Gen campaign. We know that we need to give our kids ministry and student ministries teams a boost. That if we're really going to reach our town, that we must have great kids and students ministries. Those need to be elevated in our church as we reach our town. Those ministries have to be great. And someone generously offered to match up to $50,000 until the end of the year with over and above giving. So it means that we're going to have to stretch ourselves. And I'm convinced, I am absolutely convinced that we will never regret anything that we ever gave to the kingdom. I asked us what our 20-year-old version of ourselves would say to us. What about our heavenly versions of ourselves? When all of a sudden, when we're in heaven and we see everything absolutely clear, what would they say to us? And I think it would be this, that nothing is worth anything compared to Jesus because he is our everything. What you give in this moment could change someone's eternity. And there's not a lot of things that you can do with your money that could have that kind of impact. There's someone out there who's next. Someone who needs Jesus. They're out there somewhere. They're in Chickasha. Someone is next. And for whatever reason, if they were invited to church or tragedy strikes in their life, for whatever reason, they're going to walk through those doors. And they're going to have a kid. And when that kid walks back there and experiences a kid's ministry that is super fun, super caring, and helping them find Jesus, that kid is going to want to what? He's going to want to come back. And what happens when the kid is begging the parents to go to church? The family goes to church. We want to be able to say to people with kids who are looking for a church, you better make sure you come to our church last when you're church shopping. Because when they come to our church, your search is over. That those kids are not going to want to go anywhere else. That's the kind of ministries that we want to have. So we need people to join the team. That's why Logan is having a lunch meeting after service with anyone that's willing to at least hear about it. If you're already signed up on the team, great, go to that lunch. But if you at least want to hear about what we want to do, revolutionary in this town. We want to see families coming to the Lord, and it starts there. If you at least want to hear about it, go to the lunch. And we need people to give. Someone is next, and God is counting on us to see what's important. My possessions are great, but not compared to Jesus. So I want to be open-handed with that. My career is important, but it cannot save me. My country is important. I love this country, but it is trash compared to Jesus. My kids are important, but they cannot save me. Anytime we elevate anything above knowing Jesus, we have made a devastating mistake and one we will regret. The second thing is value Jesus above all things. Value Jesus above all things. Paul's goal was simple. He said, I want to know Christ. Yes, to know the power of his resurrection and the participation in his sufferings. And we know what it takes to know Jesus. We spend time with him. We read his word. We pray. But what we might not understand, that Paul definitely understood, was to know Jesus is to become like Jesus. And what was Jesus' mission? Not to be served, but to serve. And when we have that mindset, we will know suffering. But not all suffering is bad, is it? Suffering because we are serving others is knowing Jesus. When was the last time your faith cost anything? When you value the right things, all those other things are enhanced. It's then that these things do find their right place. When we can value Jesus above everything else, then those things do matter. And they are seen in their correct light. And we can enjoy those things. When we stand in heaven, we are going to be asked one question. By whose authority are you here? And if we answer that question in the first person, we've already messed it up. Well, I did this or I did that. I was here or I did. The only answer is to say that Jesus said I could come. It is by Jesus' payment on the cross that we are admitted. And when we are in heaven, do you know what our one true reward will be? I can tell you it's not golden streets. It's not pearly gates. Who cares? The point of that was to say that the cheapest thing on this world, the cheapest thing in this world, the dirt, right, is now gold in heaven. No. Our reward is Jesus. He is our reward. He is the prize. He's the only thing that matters. He is everything. Look, Paul didn't have it right, did he? He had it way wrong. But Jesus offered him the grace to change it. And if the Holy Spirit is working in you right now to help you reevaluate what's important and what's unimportant, then do what Paul had the courage to do. Change. Look, we're going to worship. We're going to have 2 more songs. I'm going to be right down here. If you need to pray about anything, come pray with me. If you need to make a decision in your life, you can come talk to me right there. If you don't want to do it right there, I get it. Come find me somewhere else. Send me an email this week. I don't care. But do something worth doing. Give your life to Jesus and don't turn back.